Hello, everybody, and welcome to the music podcast that I like to refer to as Music Meltdown. In this series, we take any topic, artist, discography, what have you, and we rank, rate, and review them. For this episode, I'm going back to one of my prior guests' personal picks. I'm talking about the 6-album discography of Soundgarden, Chris Cornell's original band, or one of them, to my knowledge, and one of the 4 pillars of grunge. A band I wasn't necessarily too familiar with, but I had heard adjacent projects and a couple of records, and they were very interesting to me, but I did have some fundamental issues with them. To compliment me this episode, I have from the B-52's episode, Rich Latta is coming back to join me for this. Just kind of on the spot, I mentioned that this was an episode coming up, and he was like, yeah, sure, I have notes for something like that. I'll hop on that. With that being said, what was your prior knowledge of Soundgarden?
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Good to be back. I'm a pretty big fan of Soundgarden. I won't say they're one of my favorite groups, but yeah, there was a period where I was pretty intensely into them for a while, and I never lost appreciation for them. So they're a band I've gone back to over the years. Never saw them live. But I did see Audio Slave at, I don't know if it was a festival, a whole bunch of bands were playing. And that's Chris Cornell's band that he did after Soundgarden broke up. It's the members, it's the band Rage Against the Machine without the singer Zach de la Rocha. I don't like Audio Slave as much as Soundgarden or Rage Against the Machine, but they were pretty good. They put on a hell of a concert. So yeah, I really like Soundgarden. So
That is good to hear. Glad that every time that you're going to come on the show, we're going to have a B-52 situation. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you. I used to like off topic, but I used to like Rage Against the Machine way more. I got really into them whenever I was first getting into music. Used to have their self-titled record at like a 9. It's kind of floating around like a 7 for me now, just sort of not something that I typically go to that often. Not too familiar with Audio Slave. I know most of his other projects. I love Euphoria Morning. It's kind of a spoiler, but who cares? And Temple of the Dog, if you ask me, maybe the best Pearl Jam record, if you would allow me to count it, between that and 10. But yeah, I love.
You call it the best grunge record?
You? That's tricky. Depends how far out we're going. I might like Purple by STP more. I might like Purple by STP a little bit more, but yeah, it's definitely close. And I'd probably like Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins more if Billy Corgan could sing, but that's for another day. But yeah, with that being said, I figure I'll just get right into things. 6 studio records, not really too much in the outside realm that you could really consider. And yeah, let's get into things. My number 6 is going to be their reunion record, King Animal. They took a pretty big break after making Down on the Upside. Chris made a little bit of solo work, for example, Euphoria Morning, as I mentioned there. And most notably, he joined a supergroup, which you mentioned, featuring most of the members of Rage Against the Machine, called Audio Slave. And past Euphoria Morning, I know nothing of Audio Slave. I'm wanting to check out their second record because I've heard some people are really into that one, but for the most part, I'm not too interested. And like I've heard about some of those Audio Slave records, I don't think that this record sounds very good at all. I think it's really terribly overblown. And Chris's voice has clearly decreased over time, but he's still better than your average singer because Chris Cornell is a fucking god vocally. He is just absolutely sensational at pretty much every moment except this record. And song-wise to me, I just kind of find this one to be a little bit bland and generic. It's not like none of the songs are overtly bad. It's just really inoffensive in my opinion and tends to lack a ton of memorability, which most of their best records tend to have at least a track or two that really grab me. For me, this is just going to be a 2.5 stars. It's pretty mediocre, but that's a pretty considerable jump up from where I started the B-52s at. So things are better this time. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. All right. For my number 6, I've got Ultramega OK from 1988, their debut. I think it's a good debut. I think it rocks. It's definitely heavy. They called it Ultramega OK because the band thought the music was ultra mega, but the production was just okay. Chris Cornell's high-pitched wail sounds great. The guitar playing is great. But the great songs mostly aren't there yet, I would say. It does get sludgy at times, but more often it's fast-paced. What I might call alternative metal. I think that's a category that fits them. But it's far from the mainstream hair metal of the day. And there's definitely some punk in there. I think their earlier stuff was even, they put out a few EPs. I think that was even more punky. The first 2 tracks are fast and aggressive, although All Your Lies changes it up with some slower sections. There's a weird little song called 665. Pretty weird and trippy, atmospheric. Things I really appreciate. Beyond the Wheel is sludgy, and they obviously owe something to Black Sabbath here. Chris Cornell's high-pitched screech is really on point here. Mood for Trouble surprisingly starts things off with some acoustic guitar. Just briefly, though, the heavy electric guitars jump back in pretty quickly. Then the song gets slower and more drawn out before it launches into more heavy riffing. Really cool song. Circle of Power is thrashy. They mix up the tempo on that one too, though, so they keep things interesting. He Didn't is a really weird song. Weird is good. The second best song on the album for me is Smokestack Lightning, which is a Howlin' Wolf cover. And it kind of illustrates that their songwriting isn't quite up to par yet. The fact that that's one of the best songs. Towards the end of that song, Chris Cornell's voice gets impossibly high, like Mickey Mouse high. It's insane. But the last track, Incessant Mace, actually gets my vote for best on the album. It's a mid-tempo, bluesy, Sabbathy thing with some scorching guitar. Just killer. Yeah, I did Soundgarden back when Taste Like Music did them. And I originally had this album at 3.25 stars, pretty good. But with this re-listen, I brought it up to 3.5 stars, a solid good. This rocks.
Nice. Unfortunately, the reference of quarter stars is back, but our fundamental issues can disappear. Because I have some good news. I am also talking about Ultramega OK, but I have this at 4 stars already. I was really pleasantly surprised by this discography. Really come out swinging on this debut record. Unlike the band, I absolutely love the sound of this record. I think it's super heavy and just lets the guitar, drum, and bass take the center of everything. And for this being one of Chris Cornell's first vocal performances, he's just absolutely sensational all across the board. And on this record alone, in my opinion, establishes him as one of the great vocalists of all time. To me, it's probably worse, but it's probably on par. If this was their only record and the only Chris Cornell vocal performance, I'd say he's kind of similar to Jeff Buckley in that sense, to where he has, with grace, just strictly on vocals alone, just how amazing he is. Not the biggest fan of metal, but I do prefer the really heavy, dirty, sort of sludgy style. I love Black Sabbath. I think that they're taking a ton from Sabbath on this record, but they're adding in their sort of punk tendencies and their love of blues and other whatnot. Some of my favorite songs here would probably be Flower, Beyond the Wheel, Circle of Power, Nazi Driver, and I agree fully about Incessant Mace. I wasn't expecting to like this debut very much because I haven't really heard too great of things on it. I think it has a low 3.0 average on Rate Your Music, which basically means that it is an album that exists. So, but yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised. This is a pretty decent 4-star record for me. I think it is very good.
All right, for number 5, I've got King Annibal. Their it had been 16 years since their previous one, and I think King Animal rocks. Guitarist Kim Taeyil said that with this album, the band picked up where they left off from Down on the Upside, and I think that's a fair comment. Although there's little here that can compare to the heights of that album. The band sounds a bit more mature, maybe a little more conservative in their playing. Most of these songs I would rate 3.5 good, but a few do rise above that. Cornell sounds fine, but yeah, I don't think his voice is as powerful as it used to be. The first track, Been Away Too Long, announces Soundgarden's return with a straight up rocker, dressed up with some pretty cool extra guitar touches. I didn't think much of the song when I first heard it, but it's grown on me. The next one, Non-State Actor, has some killer riffs, and that's grown on me too with this re-listen. Blood on the Floor is a twisty, heavy groover, and that one gets my vote for best track on the album. Halfway There is part acoustic. It might be the mellowest thing they've ever done, but it still rocks. The last track, Rowing, starts off with some trippy sort of strummed bass. Killer tone on that bass, really good. The verses sound like a Negro spiritual, or maybe I should say black spiritual. I guess Negro is out of favor now, but I learned the term Negro spiritual. So, and the drums sound like slow, heavy Zeppelin. The song builds to a tasty climax and ends with that intro bass line. I think it's a top tier Soundgarden track. And this is a worthy reunion album. It won't be mistaken for anybody other than Soundgarden. And it doesn't reinvent the wheel, nor can it touch their best albums, but I enjoy it. 3.5 stars.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I don't hate the record or anything. It just isn't like the most notable thing to me. Okay. I want to apologize now. I had this record higher, but when I was doing my songs list, a lot of my top songs from this record tended to drop below the ones that I had for my next 3. And this record is 4 stars. I think it's very good, but you know me, I have to hot take. It is my pride and joy. So I deeply apologize, but at my number 4, I have Badmotorfinger. Here's the thing. This is a heavier, it's a tighter, it's a louder, it's a bigger record than Louder Than Love. The issue, I don't like the sound of it. I think it sounds really, at least to me, I think it's way too leaning. I think it's leaning too much on the heaviness. To me, it kind of sounds a bit bloated at points with how loud and aggressive it's trying to come at you. And I don't hate it. I get what they're going for, and I think it succeeds at that. I just don't personally want to listen to it that much. Despite that, the guitar sound is pretty good, and I like the drums as well. I do struggle to write a bit about this record because I think on a fundamental musical standpoint, it's a better record than Louder Than Love. It's probably better than Superunknown, but I don't know. It's just the songs on here and the sound of it doesn't necessarily click with me as much as the other records. There's still some incredibly great songs on here, though. Stuff like Rusty Cage, Outshined, Jesus Christ Posed, Mind Riot, and Holy Water. And I wouldn't call anything on here necessarily bad, but just something about it leaves me a little bit empty. Like I want a little bit more out of this record. And I understand fully why people love it, but for me, I can sort of admire it and acknowledge it for its play in the discography, but it doesn't quite reach the heights of their top level material for me. Still 4 stars though, still a very good record nonetheless.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying. I do. I do. I understand for sure. Um, so my number four is Louder Than Love from 1989. One could certainly mention their influences like Led Zeppelin, but I think they really have their own thing going here. Um, Kim Thayil said they were influenced by Bauhaus and Killing Joke as much as heavy metal. And I think that really shows in the darkness of their songs. Right out of the gate, Cornell's high pitched wail is piercing in a good way, of course. Um, Hands All Over is a powerful lament for the damage humans are doing to the earth. And that riff just pulls at your guts. So good. Gun starts off super slow, then gradually gains momentum till it works into a frenzy, then gets slow again. Very cool song. Loud Love just rocks. It's got a dynamic, heavy riff, hypnotic riff. I Awake is really creepy and doomy. Weird one about that one, the lyrics are actually just a note from the bassist's girlfriend that they turned into a song. Pretty weird. No Wrong, No Right starts off with some stellar drum action from Matt Cameron. That's a pretty sinister sounding song as well. But far and away, my favorite track is Big Dumb Sex. And that was just a joke song for the band. It was meant to be a laughable parody of hair metal or whatever. But it just rocks, and I think it rocks harder than anything else on the album. So definitely my favorite. The last track, the Fell on Kevin's Mom reprise at the end is banging too. Great way to close out the album. Yeah, I got this one at 4 stars.
Yeah, let's keep talking about it. That is my number three. Had the spot lower, but just running through songs had to bump it up for me. Yeah, it was a tough call for me. Like I was saying, I was telling you this in direct messages. This discography is really tight for me. I'd say my top two are pretty set, and my top two are pretty set from the start, and and those two are really tight. And then Louder Than Love and Badmotorfinger are really tight. It's just the rest of the list that the bottom two are pretty easy to define, even if I like one of them dramatically more than the other. But anyways, I feel like this record, it's a lot closer to what would later become the Soundgarden sound. I don't think that this record is quite as consistent as Badmotorfinger, though. There are a couple tracks that I'm not that into, notably being the opening track, Loud Love, and I'm not that into I Awake as well. But I think that Cornell sounds absolutely amazing on here. The production is a lot heavier and more aggressive than on Ultramega OK, which allows him to really soar through the mix a lot more. And like you were saying, Matt Cameron, pretty outstanding across the whole discography. Probably a top tier drummer, if I had to say at least top tier 80s and 90s, just like hard rock like this. And she's doing great in Pearl Jam too, so that's always an up for me. Overall, I think the songs are really great. This is the best blending of their punk and the metal influences that they had for me. I love tracks like Hand All Over, Gun, No Wrong, No Right, and Uncovered especially. And most short, I also love the reprise of Full On. I like it way more than the full song. I think the reprise is just absolutely gorgeous. While maybe this wasn't exactly the direction that I wanted the band to go in, I can't deny how strong of a record I feel it is. It's another really good 4-star record. Really, really good for me.
Okay, very cool. And you're so right about Chris Cornell's vocals, just incredible. So we're at number 3. I've got Down on the Upside from 1996. Really long album at 16 tracks, double album on vinyl. A lot of songs to get through. Of course, it's very heavy. But the album does offer some rays of sunshine in contrast to the gloom of their previous album, Superunknown. But overall, it's typically dark and bleak, as Soundgarden tends to be. The band produced the album themselves, and it's a bit more stripped down and raw compared to Superunknown. Opener Pretty Noose is great. Rhinosaur is a great rocker that switches up the tempo during the song. Dusty is pretty cool. They get the title of the album from that song. And yeah, very good song. Ty Cobb is frantic, and it's loaded with the F-bombs, which makes it kind of a strange choice for a single. Don't know what they're thinking there. Blow Up the Outside World starts off mellow, then segs into an intense chorus. Burden in My Hand, for me, by far the standout track. It's got a little honky tonk thing going for it. And I love the bubbling bass lines. Just epic. Never Named closes out the first LP with punk energy, but it's probably the weakest song on the album. The second LP of the album is maybe a little more psychedelic. I especially love Tighter and Tighter, which is kind of slow and heavy with some fantastic guitar solos. And Unkind is another fast song. Their fast songs tend to be kind of tossed off filler, but it's still pretty good. And I love the closer, Boot Camp. It's about being confined and dreaming of being in a better place, kind of mysterious sounding. Overall, it's an interesting album. Very long, kind of a tough nut to crack, but it rocks. 4 stars.
Yeah. What can I say? It's between that and Superunknown for me. You mentioned Down on the Upside is actually 16 tracks, but it's actually 5 minutes shorter than Superunknown, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I had these two flipped around initially when I first made my list, but just going through songs, I can't act like this isn't my number 2, but these are so tight. They're probably both like 8.8 out of 10s for me. I think they're incredibly strong records, really highlights of grunge for me. And it was so tough to call, but for me, number 2 is going to be Superunknown. It's so close between this and Down on the Upside, and I could really see it going either way. But I ended up going with Down on the Upside for this one. Although I think this is probably Chris's best vocal performance, and the drumming and guitar is just continuing to improve more and more with each record. I do like the bass on this record a good bit more than Badmotorfinger. Just love how it keeps going with everything and just elevating the songs so much more. And for me, song-wise, this is just their best effort up to this point, but there's some evident standouts within that. My Wave, Superunknown, Black Hole Sun, The Day I Tried to Leave, and 4th of July, all just being outstanding in my opinion. And there's very little that I would call on this record being below par or lacking for being over an hour long. It keeps me relatively interested throughout almost all of it, and a lot of it comes down to the sound. That was my big issue with Badmotorfinger. And that is the main thing I have to praise with Superunknown and Down on the Upside. I love the sound of this record. I think it is way cleaner, way calmer, but it has a bit of that like 90s alt rock flair to it. And it is just absolutely amazing. It's not overblown. It's not overly loud. It's presenting the music in an incredibly crisp way, but it still gives you the ferocity of the band just at a fundamental level. And it just showcases just how exceptional they're playing, and Chris is especially. Despite that, however, I do only have this one at 4 stars for me. As much as I like the tracks here, it's 70 minutes. It's hard to justify that for any band. If this could have been like 50 minutes, cut a couple of the tracks, maybe trim a couple down, could have probably been 4.5 stars for me. Hell, I could even see, no, I don't know if it quite has 5 equity, but definitely 4.5 equity for me. Yeah, really, really good record for me.
Yeah, well, you're a tough grader. Okay, my number two is Badmotorfinger from 1991. This album totally rocks. Um, they really take things up a notch or two in the songwriting department, I think. Rusty Cage starts the album off with a bang. I love it when it slips into a slower groove too. New bassist Ben Shepherd makes his presence known right away. Outshined is such a great song. Love that pre-chorus. So now you know who gets mystified. He really pours his guts out on slaves and bulldozers. Um, I mean, he's screaming, but it's just great. And Jesus Christ pose rumbles hard. And I love the way it takes on people who use gods like Jesus for their own ends. And I will say Chris Cornell is a good lyricist. He usually has something interesting to say. Um, Sometimes it's just meaningless imagery, but that's cool too. Um, let's see. Searching for My Good Eye Closed is trippy. Drawing Flies brings some old school rock and roll groove to the tables. Sounds kind of like Thin Lizzy or some shit. Um, Chris sings his guts out on Holy Water, and there's a psychedelic metal guitar solo in there that's so cool. Um, I could see how some people might think his voice sounds shrill because it's really piercing, but I think he just really can sing. It's fantastic. Um, and the last song rocks. I read that it's an anti-right wing politics song, so that's cool. Um, this is just an extremely well done alternative metal album. Um, it rocks hard, harder than the two albums that came before it, and I think the songs are better. I'm up to 4.25 stars.
Yeah, that's a fair call. If I were to include quarter stars, I would definitely have a couple here. So don't feel too bad about me only being at four. Just sort of a fundamental thing that I do. Number one for me, this is gonna be kind of hard to justify, I feel, but number one for me is Down on the Upside. I really wasn't sure where to put this record. This top three for me is really tight, like I've been saying. Any of them could be number one, the top two, moreover, but I definitely see a case for Louder Than Love as well. But in a lot of ways, Down on the Upside is pretty similar to Superunknown. This one is a lot less commercial, and in my opinion, a good bit heavier. And Chris's voice is just as good as it was on Superunknown, if not maybe arguably a little bit better, in my opinion, because the music's a little bit heavier and it allows him to showcase how powerful and just how capable of a vocalist he really is. But generally speaking, I prefer the record's instrumentation here, but I would say song-wise, it's maybe not quite as strong there. But when they are, it's pretty equal. I love Rhinosaur, Ty Cobb, Blow Up the Outside World, Never the Machine Forever, and I especially adored Boot Camp. I think that song is just absolutely tremendous. And I wouldn't call anything even close to subpar. I think that the production on this record is just absolutely sublime. Just really great. Just took what I loved on Superunknown, but made it a little bit heavier, made things a little bit crunchier, and it just totally blows it away, in my opinion. But I think that for me, my highlights on this record are just slightly better than Superunknown, but it is so close. And like I said, they're probably both like 8.8 out of 10s. I want to push this one to a 4.5, but it's like the 90s sucked because everything was too long. I just wish that this could be like, instead of 65 minutes, I wish it could be 50 minutes, and I wish it could be like 13, 14 tracks. Trim a little bit of fat, just get all of the power and all the ferocity that you were going for, and you are just going to have a much better overall project, and you are going to have a sensational rock record. Despite that, it's a really strong 4-star record for me. I wanted to go higher, but I need more time with it. But for now, I got 5 Soundgarden records at 4 stars, probably a top 100 artist for me now, based on that.
Yeah, what you need is quarter stars. You need that 4.25.
No, I'm not a silly goose there. Don't worry for me.
There's a few people who were on board with my quarter stars.
Need you to show them to me because I've yet.
Not rate your music, unfortunately. There, I just shave off the quarter star every time. You know,
All good, all good.
maybe I might bump it up to the higher star on occasion, but yeah, those quarter stars really serve me.
Yeah.
So anyway, my number one, Superunknown from 1994. I think this is clearly the pinnacle of Soundgarden's music. Their best songs are on this album, and it rocks so hard. The only thing I'll say against it is that at 15 songs, it is very long and it drags at times if I'm not in the mood for it. For that reason, I had it at 4.5 stars. But after this last listen, it has gone up to 5 stars. All those songs that used to drag, I completely love them now. It is a long album, a double album on vinyl. And since it has 15 tracks on the fourth side, they put an extra track called, I think it's called She Likes Surprises or something like that. That song sucks. They shouldn't have added it. They should have left the last side just 3 stars, three songs. That would have been better. That was a mistake, but I'm going to ignore that because I had the CD, 15 songs. Starts off with Let Me Drown, a tight, twisty rocker. The next song, My Wave, is just crushing. Their best songs are, let's see, easily one of my favorite Soundgarden songs, My Wave. It would have been a great opening track, but it sticks to that high fidelity rule. Start off with a banger, and the second track takes it up a notch. And My Wave definitely took it up a notch. I just think this song is a quantum leap over all the music that came before it in their catalog. Love that song. This is pretty sophisticated metal. The band uses unusual time signatures and guitar tunings. Kim Thayil has an East Indian ancestry, I believe, and he brings this sort of Eastern psychedelia to the mix sometimes. And Ben Shepherd's bass and Matt Cameron's drums are phenomenal as well. Fell on Black Days is just a classic. It was a song that was definitely there for me when I went through some dark times. Mailman is one of those songs that drags, but I really love it now. It's got a powerful slow chug. Interestingly, drummer Matt Cameron plays this really cool sounding mellotron in there. I don't know if you noticed that. It's a Soundgarden anomaly. Really cool. Mailman is about a postman who goes postal. So the title track, not my favorite, but it's still good. Black Hole Sun, of course, that's just a mind blower. Probably their most well-known song. Excuse me. I love how that eerie guitar at the beginning eventually becomes a swirling ball of psychedelia. That one is really next level. Just amazing. Limo Wreck is the other song that really drags, but like I said, I totally dig it now. It's got a very sinister riff in the verses. The Day I Tried to Live just kills me. I woke the same as any other day. You know, I should have stayed in bed. Oh, just I've been there so many times. I don't know. This song just really speaks to me. One more time around might do it. But the next song, Kickstand, is a throwaway punk song, and I think it just sounds awful coming after the masterpiece that is The Day I Tried to Live. Very poor sequencing decision there, I think, but it's actually a good song. There's no bad songs on Superunknown, and most of the songs are great. Fresh Tendrils, that would have sounded much better after The Day I Tried to Live. I don't know what the song is about, but it's thought-provoking. 4th of July chugs along in a really pleasing way. A song about taking LSD. Half makes use of East Indian instruments and has a very East Indian flavor. Like Suicide, the closer, it's a devastating real-life account of a bird who broke its neck when it flew into a window at Chris Cornell's house, and he had to put it out of its misery with a brick. And Chris really sings his heart out with that piercing voice as usual. And this is just a grunge landmark. Same for alternative metal and what I half jokingly refer to as depression rock. I have a history of severe depression, and this album just really speaks to me. It's the Soundgarden album I truly love. It's a Dark Night of the Soul album. Again, 5 stars, easily my number one.
Yeah, totally fair. I get what you're saying. It's right there for me. I want to love it more than I do, but it's just like it's hard even for like the best bands or even my favorite bands for me to justify a record longer than 50 minutes. It's just something with me. I don't want my time to be wasted, and I feel like generally speaking, if your record's going to be more than 40 minutes long, there's going to be a lot of filler there. Like, obviously, there's outliers, but for me at least, that's kind of 40 minutes, 35 to like 45 minutes is a sweet spot for a record, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Alrighty, but with that being said, top 10 songs, did a few more than top 10, but I'll list a couple of extra ones at the end here. Don't have really notes or anything. Oh, I forgot to even write down what album these songs are on. So nice. With that being said, let's just get into them. Number 10 is going to be Never the Machine Forever. I believe that is here. We'll have you test me about my Soundgarden knowledge now. I believe that one's down on the upside, right?
What's it called?
Never the Machine Forever, or am I stupid? Am I already getting this wrong?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's fine. Who cares? These are just songs anyway. This is the part of the video that I typically don't even do. So number 9 for me is going to be Mind Riot. I believe that one's Badmotorfinger. 8 for me is Boot Camp. Closing track off down on the upside. 7 is 4th of July from not Soundgarden, always from Soundgarden. Superunknown. 6 is going to be Ty Cobb from Down on the Upside. Number 5 is going to be Blow Up the Outside World from Down the Upside. Number 3, Full On from the Reprise from Louder Than Love. Number 3 for me is going to be Hands All Over off Louder Than Love as well. Number 2 is going to be Rhinosaur from Down the Upside. And number 1, as much as I love some of these Down the Upside and Louder Than Love songs, pretty definitively, in my opinion, the best Soundgarden song is I'm Basic, Black Hole Sun.
Yeah, Black Hole Sun, excellent choice. Rhinosaur, great choice. I don't know how close those other songs would get to the top, but I dig your list. Very cool. So yeah, I wrote down a few runners up here. I had a really hard time filling the number 10 spot wasn't sure what to put there. A few of them I considered: Incessant Mace from Ultramega OK, Searching with My Good Eye Closed, Badmotorfinger, Spoon Man, Superunknown, Pretty Noose down on the upside. But I went with Slaves and Bulldozers from Badmotorfinger. Just a powerhouse vocal performance from Chris Cornell on that. Number 9 is Tighter and Tighter from Down on the Upside. Sleep tight. Number 8, Burden in My Hand from Down on the Upside. Number 7, Rusty Cage from Badmotorfinger. Number 6, Outshined from Badmotorfinger. Number 5, Fell on Black Days from Superunknown. Number 4, Big Dumb Sex from Louder Than Love. Number 3, My Way from Superunknown. Number 2, Black Hole Sun from Superunknown. And my number 1 Soundgarden song, The Day I Tried to Live, Superunknown.
Nice. I actually thought that one was going to be my number 1 going into it, but just looking at songs, stuff on Down on the Upside really clicked with me, and that's the only reason why we didn't agree. I just think that the best songs are slightly better for me. My 15 through 11, some stuff that was either close or made your list, generally speaking. Day I Tried to Live ended up being my 15. Gun was 14. 13 was Incessant Mace. 12 was Superunknown, and then 11 was No Wrong, No Right. But
rock and roll.
For sure. This is a really fun one for me. I had only known Badmotorfinger and Superunknown going into this, and I had them both at like pretty middling 3.5 stars. I thought that they were just sort of all right. They were good, and I could acknowledge why people really enjoyed them, but I just personally didn't care for them very much. But as you can tell by my current scores, my tune has slightly changed in that accord. I think that they're a really interesting, really unique band. And I love how you were mentioning this earlier. They play with different time signatures. They play with different awkward tunings and whatnot. Stuff that you would generally see more in like some of the underground like 80s indie rock and alternative rock bands. Stuff like that. Like a Sonic Youth or something like that, with the experimentation, that accord. And it's really interesting seeing this more sort of mainstream metal and hard rock approach in that sort of styling. While not really, they're obviously not Sonic Youth or like Slint or something, but they have their own approach to doing these more unique musical ideas that I think really works out in a really captivating way. It really helps these super long records, because none of their records, aside from Ultramega OK, are below like I think 50 minutes. And they kind of show at points, but I mean, the different tunings and whatnot is able to really make it a lot more interesting, and it never really mellows out into a certain groove or style or something. And that really helps the discography, I feel.
Yeah. You had me a little worried at the beginning of the video. I was scared this was going to be a B-52 situation, but I'm glad you really appreciate them.
Yeah, no, they're a really cool band. And like I'm saying, four stars is absolutely not a bad thing in my book. I think that these are very good records. I have 2 of them at nearly 9 out of 10. So there's no grievances with me. For a lot of people, my top 2 would be 4.5 stars. Just not how my star ratings sort of work out. If I were to play with those dastardly quarter stars, I'd be a little bit repulsed, but they would be there.
All right. Well, final thoughts. They're not really one of my favorite bands, but I think they're top 100, if not top 50.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. Like I was saying, I'd have to look at things because I have a rough list. Like I'm looking at some of my slots. I can actually probably slot them in right now if I'm being honest. So sure, let's do that. I'm looking at my list right now. I'm thinking, yeah, they're definitely in there. They're in the lower, like bottom 10 of my top 100 though. I'll probably put them right below the Police at 91. I think they're a really great, really interesting group, but I'm not sure necessarily how often I'll return to their records. And that's kind of the big issue with them. but their best songs are some of the best stuff of the 90s, I would say. Which, for better or worse, I'm not the biggest 90s head, but 90s aren't bad. 90s are cool. A lot of great stuff in the 90s. So yeah, that was Soundgarden. Hope I didn't make you cry that much, Zach. Did this one for you, buddy. Hope to see you back. I believe we are playing 1975 at some point, so that'll be fun. But next episode, we're going back to the 80s. Maybe the first time I've really explored the 80s. Some, well, B-52s, but they started in the 70s. This guy technically started back in the 60s. I don't know how I came to this point, and I'm a little upset that I came to this point, and I was not enthused to do this discography, but what the hell, it was fun. Doing Phil Collins next week. All of his records except for Going Back, because cover records are really dumb. With that being said, I'm going to have a couple of new guests in here, and after that, I'm going to be doing, I believe, the solo discography of Peter Green on my own. 6 records there, so that's going to be really interesting. Hope you all enjoy. Hope you thought that this was a nice, fun one. I had a good time recording it. With that being said, you all have a great one. Bye. Click the stop button.